Imagine this. You've known someone for years. Maybe it was your best friend. Maybe it was someone you loved. Maybe it was a family member you thought you could always count on. For years, you shared memories together. You laughed together. You trusted them with things you never told anyone else. You believed they would never intentionally hurt you. Then one day, everything changed. Maybe you discovered they lied to you. Maybe they betrayed your confidence. Maybe they cheated. Maybe they broke a promise they swore they would keep. In that single moment, nothing around you changed. The room looked exactly the same. Their voice sounded the same. Their face was still familiar. But something inside your mind changed forever. Suddenly, the person standing in front of you felt like a stranger. Have you ever wondered why that happens? Why can one moment erase years of trust? Why do some relationships survive betrayal while others never recover? Psychologists have spent decades studying trust, relationships, and human behavior. What they've discovered is fascinating. Trust isn't just about believing someone. It's one of the foundations of how our brains decide who is emotionally safe. Once that foundation begins to crack, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. Today, we're going to explore the psychology of broken trust, why betrayal hurts so deeply, why apologies sometimes fail, why people become emotionally distant after being hurt, and whether trust can ever truly be rebuilt. Most people think trust is simply about believing someone. But psychology reveals that trust is something much deeper. Trust is the feeling of emotional safety. It's the quiet confidence that someone's words and actions will match. It's knowing that when someone says, "I'll be there," they actually mean it. It's believing that when you share something personal, it won't be used against you later. Trust allows your mind to relax. Think about walking across a bridge. When you trust the bridge, you don't stop every few seconds and wonder if it will collapse. You don't inspect every piece of wood beneath your feet. You simply walk because your brain believes you are safe. Relationships work the same way. When trust exists, you don't constantly question every conversation, every message, or every explanation. You don't feel the need to investigate every detail because the relationship has created a sense of security. That security is one of the most valuable things two people can build together. But trust is not created through one big moment. It's created through thousands of small moments. A person keeping their promises. Someone admitting when they are wrong. Someone respecting your boundaries. Someone showing up when they say they will. Someone choosing honesty even when the truth is uncomfortable. Every one of these moments is like adding another brick to a wall. One brick doesn't seem important. But over time, those bricks create something strong enough to protect the relationship. This is why trust often feels invisible when it's there. You don't wake up every morning thinking, "I trust this person today." You simply live. You share your thoughts. You make plans. You become vulnerable. You allow someone to see parts of you that the rest of the world never sees. And that vulnerability is only possible because your brain has made a decision. This person is safe. But how does your brain decide someone is safe? It looks for patterns. Human beings are naturally designed to look for consistency. Throughout history, knowing who could be trusted was a matter of survival. The people around you had to prove, through their actions, that they were reliable. Your brain still works in a similar way today. It watches. It remembers. It collects evidence. One kind action may not create complete trust. One mistake may not destroy it. But repeated patterns are what shape your perception of someone. A person who consistently shows honesty becomes someone you trust. A person who consistently breaks promises becomes someone your brain starts warning you about. This is why broken trust can feel so painful. Because when someone betrays you, they're not just breaking a promise. They're destroying the evidence your brain used to decide they were safe. Suddenly, the question changes. Before betrayal, your mind asks, "Can I trust this person?" After betrayal, the question becomes, "What else don't I know?" And that question is where the real damage begins. Because broken trust doesn't only affect how you see the other person. It can affect how you see your entire relationship. It can make you question your memories, your decisions, your ability to judge people's character. And sometimes, the hardest part of betrayal isn't losing the person. It's losing the version of them you believed was real. Because trust is not just about the relationship you have with someone else. It's also about the reality you built around them. And when that reality falls apart, the emotional impact can be much deeper than most people realize. The strange thing about betrayal is that the pain doesn't always come from the event itself. Sometimes, the deepest pain comes from realizing that your understanding of someone was incomplete. Imagine discovering that someone you trusted for years was hiding something from you. At first, your brain tries to reject it. No, that can't be true. There must be another explanation. Maybe I misunderstood what happened. This reaction is not weakness. It's your mind trying to protect itself. Psychologists call this experience cognitive dissonance. It happens when you are forced to hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. One belief says, this person loves me. This person cares about me. This person would never intentionally hurt me. But another belief says, this person lied to me. This person betrayed me. This person did something that goes against everything I believed about them. The human brain does not like contradictions. It wants the world to make sense. So when these two realities collide, your mind starts searching for answers. Sometimes people try to minimize what happened. They tell themselves, maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe they had a good reason. Maybe I should just move on. Other times, people blame themselves. How did I not see this? Was there something I missed? Did I ignore the warning signs? This is one of the most painful parts of broken trust. The betrayal doesn't just make you question the other person. It can make you question yourself, your judgment, your instincts, your ability to understand people. And that is why betrayal often feels bigger than one moment. Because your brain doesn't just process what happened today. It starts reviewing everything that happened before. A conversation from months ago. A strange reaction you once ignored. A moment where something felt wrong, but you trusted them anyway. Suddenly, old memories begin appearing in a different light. A joke that once seemed harmless now feels suspicious. A delayed response that once seemed normal now feels like a warning sign. A small inconsistency that you dismissed now feels important. Why does this happen? Because our memories are not stored like videos on a hard drive. Every time we remember something, our brain reconstructs that memory using what we know now. The event itself doesn't change, but the meaning we attach to it can. It's like looking at an old photograph after learning a hidden truth. The picture is the same. The people are the same. The moment is the same. But suddenly, you notice things you never noticed before. This is why betrayal can feel like it changes the past. The past itself did not change. Your understanding of it changed. And that can create a painful emotional conflict. Because now you are forced to answer a difficult question. If I was wrong about this person, what else could I be wrong about? This is where trust begins to break down on a deeper level. Before betrayal, you see the person through the lens of safety. You interpret their actions with good intentions. If they are late, you assume something happened. If they forget something, you give them the benefit of the doubt. If they make a mistake, you believe it was accidental. But after betrayal, that same lens changes. The brain becomes more protective. It starts looking for patterns. It starts searching for evidence that danger might happen again. This is why someone who has experienced betrayal may become more cautious, more distant, or more suspicious. They are not simply reacting to the present moment. They are reacting to the memory of what happened before. The mind is saying, last time I trusted completely, I got hurt. So this time, I need to be careful. And while this response is designed to protect us, it can also create another challenge. Because once trust is damaged, rebuilding it requires more than just proving the betrayal was a mistake. It requires showing, consistently, that the person is safe again. And that is where many relationships struggle. Because breaking trust can happen in a moment. But rebuilding it happens one choice at a time. Imagine touching a hot stove for the first time. The pain is immediate. But what's even more important is what happens afterward. The next time you walk past that stove, you don't need someone to remind you to be careful. Your brain remembers. It learned that something which once seemed harmless could cause pain. The same thing happens after emotional betrayal. When someone breaks your trust, your brain treats that experience as a threat. Not necessarily a physical threat, but an emotional one. And to your brain, emotional pain can be just as significant. This is why people often say, I'll never let that happen to me again. They're not simply making a decision. Their brain is adapting. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as a protective response. After a betrayal, the mind becomes more alert, more observant, more cautious. Instead of automatically assuming people have good intentions, it begins looking for signs that history might repeat itself. This is why someone who has been deeply hurt may suddenly notice things they never paid attention to before. A delayed text message, a change in someone's tone of voice, a broken promise. a small inconsistency in a story. To someone else, these moments may seem insignificant. But to a person whose trust has been broken, they can feel like warning signs. Not because they want to overthink, but because their brain is trying to protect them from experiencing that same pain again. Think of it like a home security system. When it's working properly, it alerts you only when there's a real threat. But after a break-in, many people become extra cautious. They check the locks twice. They install cameras. Every unexpected sound gets their attention. The house hasn't changed, but their sense of safety has. The same thing happens in relationships. After betrayal, your emotional security system becomes more sensitive. You may begin asking more questions. You may hesitate before opening up. You may keep parts of yourself hidden because vulnerability no longer feels safe. To the outside world, it might look like you've become cold or distant, but often, that's not what's happening at all. You're protecting yourself. One of the biggest misconceptions about broken trust is that people stop caring. In reality, many people still care deeply. They simply stop feeling safe enough to show it. This is why emotional distance often appears after betrayal. It isn't always punishment. It isn't always anger. Sometimes it's self-preservation. Imagine carrying a priceless glass vase. If someone accidentally drops it once, you might still let them hold it again. But they'll probably hold it more carefully, and you'll probably watch a little more closely. Now imagine they drop it again. Eventually, you stop handing them the vase. Not because you hate them, because you've learned what might happen if you do. Trust works the same way. Every betrayal teaches the brain a lesson. And whether that lesson is accurate or not, the brain remembers it. That's why rebuilding trust isn't simply about convincing someone to believe you again. You first have to convince their nervous system that they are safe. And that takes far more than words. Another fascinating part of psychology is that emotional pain doesn't stay neatly organized inside one relationship. Sometimes it spreads. A person betrayed by one partner may become suspicious of the next. Someone lied to by a close friend may struggle to trust new friendships, even when the new person has done nothing wrong. This isn't because people want to carry emotional baggage. It's because the brain prefers false alarms over repeated danger. From an evolutionary perspective, it's safer to be overly cautious than completely unaware. If your ancestors ignored warning signs too often, they didn't survive very long. Our brains inherited that survival strategy. The problem is that the same system designed to protect us can sometimes prevent us from connecting with good people. Fear starts replacing openness. Control replaces vulnerability. Distance replaces intimacy. Without realizing it, people begin building emotional walls. Those walls keep pain out, but they can also keep love out. This is why broken trust affects more than one relationship. It changes the way we see people. It changes the way we see ourselves. And sometimes, it changes the way we experience the world. But here's something important to remember. Protecting yourself is healthy. Living in fear is not. The goal isn't to stop trusting people forever. The goal is to become wiser about who earns that trust. Because there's a difference between building healthy boundaries and building walls so high that no one can ever reach you. Understanding that difference may be one of the most important lessons psychology can teach us. One of the biggest misconceptions about relationships is the belief that a sincere apology can fix everything. We've all heard the phrase, if they're truly sorry, you should forgive them. But psychology tells us that an apology and rebuilt trust are two very different things. An apology can acknowledge the pain. It can express regret. It can even be completely genuine. But an apology, by itself, cannot erase what the brain has already learned. Imagine hiring a contractor to build your dream home. For years, they do excellent work. You recommend them to everyone you know. Then one day, you discover they intentionally cut corners on the foundation. Even if they immediately apologize, even if they promise never to do it again, would you instantly feel comfortable letting them continue building your house? Probably not. Not because you enjoy holding grudges, but because confidence has been damaged. Relationships work in much the same way. Trust isn't rebuilt through words. It's rebuilt through evidence. Think about it this way. Imagine someone accidentally spills a glass of water onto your laptop. They immediately apologize. You know they didn't mean to do it. Their apology matters. But it doesn't magically repair the computer. The damage still exists. The repair process still takes time. Broken trust follows the same principle. An apology may begin the healing process, but it isn't the healing process itself. This is why many people become frustrated after saying, "I already apologized." What more do they want? What they often don't realize is that the other person isn't waiting for another apology. They're waiting for consistency. They're waiting to see if your future behavior matches your words. Because trust has always been built through repeated experiences, and it must be rebuilt the same way. Psychologists often describe trust as something your brain predicts. Before betrayal, your brain predicts safety. After betrayal, it predicts uncertainty. The only way to change that prediction is by giving the brain new experiences over time. Not once, not twice, but consistently. Imagine someone tells you every day, "You can trust me," but every few weeks, they break another promise. Eventually, your brain stops listening to what they say. It starts paying attention only to what they do. This is one of the most important truths about human behavior. People believe patterns more than promises. A promise is a sentence. A pattern is proof. That's why rebuilding trust is often exhausting. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires patience from both people. The person who was hurt has to slowly allow themselves to become vulnerable again. The person who caused the hurt has to accept that rebuilding confidence may take months or even years. And they must do it without demanding immediate forgiveness. This is where many relationships fail. Not because the mistake was too big, but because one person wants instant results. They become frustrated when trust doesn't immediately return. They begin saying things like, "Why can't you just move on? Aren't we past this already? If you forgave me, why do you still bring it up?" These questions often come from a misunderstanding of how emotional healing works. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still not trust them. You can let go of anger while still protecting yourself. Forgiveness is a decision. Trust is a prediction. One happens inside the heart. The other happens inside the brain. And because they serve different purposes, they don't always happen at the same time. This doesn't mean relationships can never recover. Many do. Some become even stronger than they were before. But only when both people understand that rebuilding trust is not about convincing someone with words. It's about creating enough new experiences that the old fear slowly loses its power. Every honest conversation, every kept promise, every moment of accountability, every action that matches every word, becomes another brick placed back into the foundation. Slowly, patiently, one day at a time. Because trust isn't restored in one grand moment. It's rebuilt through ordinary moments repeated consistently. And that's something many people don't realize until they've experienced it themselves. By now, we've learned that trust isn't simply about believing someone. It's about emotional safety. We've seen how betrayal changes the way the brain processes memories. We've explored why people become emotionally distant after being hurt. And we've discovered why apologies alone are rarely enough to repair the damage. But this brings us to perhaps the most difficult question of all. Can broken trust ever truly be rebuilt? The answer is yes, but not always. And that's an important distinction. Because many people confuse rebuilding trust with simply staying together. Those are not the same thing. Some relationships survive betrayal. Others don't. The difference usually isn't the size of the mistake. It's what happens after the mistake. Imagine two different couples. In the first relationship, one partner lies. When the truth comes out, they immediately accept responsibility. They don't make excuses. They don't blame stress. They don't blame the other person. Instead, they acknowledge the pain they caused. Over the following months, their behavior begins to change. They become more transparent, more honest, more consistent. They understand that rebuilding trust is not about convincing someone with words. It's about proving themselves through actions. Now imagine a second relationship. The same betrayal happens, but this time, the response is different. The person who broke the trust becomes defensive. They minimize what happened. They say things like, "You're overreacting. It wasn't a big deal. You should already be over this." Instead of creating safety, they create more uncertainty. Can you see the difference? The betrayal may have been similar, but the response completely changes the future of the relationship. Psychologists often say that people don't rebuild trust because they say the right things. They rebuild trust because they consistently become the kind of person who deserves it. That transformation cannot be rushed, and it cannot be faked, because eventually, patterns always reveal the truth. This is why actions will always speak louder than promises. Anyone can promise they'll change, Very few people are willing to demonstrate that change every single day. And here's another truth that many people struggle to accept. Sometimes, walking away is the healthiest decision. We often hear that successful relationships require forgiveness. And that's true. But healthy relationships also require accountability, respect, honesty, safety. If those things never return, holding onto the relationship simply because of history can sometimes cause more damage than letting it go. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that time heals broken trust. Time, by itself, heals nothing. Time only creates the opportunity for healing. Real healing comes from changed behavior, from difficult conversations, from accountability, from rebuilding emotional safety one experience at a time. Without those things, time simply allows the hurt to become quieter, not smaller. There is another important difference that psychology teaches us: the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you choose for yourself. It means refusing to let resentment control your future. Reconciliation is different. It requires two people. It requires mutual effort, mutual honesty, mutual commitment. You can forgive someone and still decide they no longer have a place in your life. Those two ideas can exist together. An understanding that often removes a great deal of guilt from people who have struggled to move forward. Because protecting your peace is not the same as holding a grudge. Sometimes, it's simply wisdom earned through experience. Perhaps that's what broken trust teaches us more than anything else. It teaches us to stop judging people by their words and start paying attention to their patterns. Words can be rehearsed. Promises can be repeated. Excuses can sound convincing. But patterns reveal character every single time. And maybe that is the greatest lesson trust has to offer. Not that people never disappoint us. They will. Not that relationships are guaranteed to last forever. They aren't. But that understanding human behavior allows us to recognize who consistently creates safety and who consistently takes it away. The goal isn't to become someone who never trusts again. The goal is to become someone who trusts wisely. Because a life without trust is lonely. But a life without discernment is dangerous. Learning the difference may be one of the most valuable skills you'll ever develop. Broken trust has a way of changing us. Sometimes it makes us stronger. Sometimes it makes us more cautious. And sometimes, it makes us afraid to open our hearts again. If you've ever been betrayed, you know that the hardest part isn't always losing the relationship. It's losing the certainty you once had. The certainty that this person would always be there. The certainty that your memories were built on something real. The certainty that your judgment was right. When that certainty disappears, it's easy to believe you'll never trust the same way again. But maybe that's not the lesson we're supposed to learn. Maybe the goal isn't to go back to trusting the way we did before. Maybe the goal is to trust differently. Not blindly, not fearfully, but wisely. Psychology teaches us something powerful. Every relationship is built on patterns, not isolated moments, not perfect words, not grand promises. Patterns. The person who keeps showing up. The person whose actions consistently match their words. The person who accepts responsibility instead of making excuses. The person who makes you feel safe rather than anxious. Those are the people who earn trust. And the people who repeatedly create confusion, doubt, and uncertainty reveal something just as important. Their patterns are speaking too. One of the greatest skills you can develop in life is learning to pay attention to those patterns before your emotions convince you to ignore them. Because understanding people isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming aware. Awareness doesn't make you cold. It makes you wiser. It helps you recognize healthy relationships before they become meaningful, and unhealthy relationships before they become painful. Perhaps that's the hidden gift behind every betrayal. Not the pain itself, but the wisdom it leaves behind. Every difficult experience teaches us something. It teaches us what honesty feels like, what respect looks like, what consistency sounds like, what emotional safety truly means. Those lessons become part of who we are. And if we choose to learn from them instead of becoming trapped by them, they make us better judges of character. Not because we'll never be hurt again, but because we'll recognize the warning signs sooner. We'll set healthier boundaries. We'll choose relationships that bring peace instead of constant uncertainty. In the end, trust is always a risk. Every meaningful relationship requires vulnerability. No one can guarantee they'll never be disappointed, but we can become wiser about who we choose to trust. And that wisdom may be one of the greatest forms of self-protection we will ever have. Because the better you understand human behavior, the better you understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you stop chasing relationships that constantly make you question your worth. Instead, you begin choosing the ones that remind you of it. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this video helped you see trust, relationships, or human behavior from a new perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is harder to rebuild after betrayal, trust, or the way you see the person afterward? Leave your answer in the comments. I read them all, and your perspective might help someone else who's going through the same experience. And if you're fascinated by the psychology behind human behavior, relationships, and the patterns that shape our lives, subscribe to Wake Up Mindset. Every week, we explore the science, stories, and psychology that help you understand people more deeply and make wiser decisions in your own life. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and never stop waking up your mind.